This week on the agenda, we're going to have our first time guest, hopefully not a last time guest, Congresswoman Lisa Blunt Rochester. She is going to talk to us about the Protecting Our Children Act, or Protecting Our Kids Act, that's going through the House down in Washington. It has passed through the House and is working directly, and I mean directly, in regards to the assault weapons that are doing, I can't even begin to put into words the damage that it's causing to our country, these horrific acts of violence and domestic terrorism, basically. And so many of us are wondering what is going on in Washington right now to deal with these issues. What are our legislators doing to deal with these issues? And from a Delaware perspective, what's going on? What is our representation providing for us? So we're very, very excited to have Congresswoman Blunt Rochester here. And welcome, ma'am.
Thank you so much, Kerwin. Thank you so much. And thank you to the DETV audience for the opportunity to share with you what's happening in Washington, D.C., particularly as it relates to gun violence.
Absolutely. I mean, we are truly blessed here in Delaware to have a congressional delegation that is easily accessible and, loves to break it down for us and to let us know and to really spearhead what's going on in Washington and have some movers and shakers such as you and Senator Coons and Senator Carper down there working for not only the benefit of the Delawareans, but the benefit of the United States of America. So thank you very much for that.
Thank you. Thank you. And I want to start off by saying thank you to Delawareans who have reached out, who have made their voices heard, who have let us know the impacts that gun violence has had on their lives and on their families. And also, as you mentioned at the top, we in the House just passed the Protecting Our Kids Act, which is a comprehensive approach to protecting our communities. And I guess I want to take a step back and just think about the fact that not only have we seen these mass shootings, these horrible mass shootings, whether it is, Black folks shopping in a supermarket or children just going to school in Uvalde, we also know that in our own communities every day, we see the impacts of gun violence. And it might not make, national headlines, but it affects families, communities, jobs every single day. And so in the House, we just passed a comprehensive package that has 7 parts to it. Everything from raising the age of owning a semi-automatic weapon, from 18 to 21, to strengthening background checks and outlawing those high capacity magazines that you just spoke about. So it is called the Protecting Our Kids Act. And yesterday, we also took action for what is called the Federal Extreme Risk Protection Order Act, and commonly known as red flag laws, to make sure that we take guns out of the hands of dangerous individuals across the country. So these are major packages that just went through, and we actually know that there's not one single simple solution, but we've got to make movement on these common sense measures.
Absolutely. And that was one of the things that I wanted to say. I found it interesting. You can learn so much in words, right? Words tell us so much. But I see these common sense measures. What does that mean? I mean, to you and me, it seems like common sense is very common, but as my father says, common sense isn't necessarily common, right? So what does that wording mean in this legislation?
Yeah, I guess first of all, if you just take a step back and ask the average person, the average American, Democrats, Republicans, independents, all hues, we know that some things just don't make sense. The fact that an 18-year-old can just go out and buy this weapon of war does not make sense. The fact that we don't have background checks doesn't make sense. And so there are statistics that show 88% of all Americans support requiring background checks on gun sales. 75% support the creation of a national database on gun sales. 67% support banning assault-style weapons. 84% support red flag laws. That means to me that there's a common denominator here, that these things make sense. These measures make sense. And so not only do they make sense because people want them and believe in them, but they also make sense because it will make a difference in what we're seeing. Will we solve every single, issue? No, but the vast majority of Americans believe that we need these kind of measures to make a dent in this epidemic. And when I think about across the world, other countries are dealing with some of the same issues we are, but the proliferation of guns really sets us apart. And so that's why we believe, as does the majority of the public, that these are common sense gun reforms and ways to create public safety.
Absolutely. And to your point, this goes on to be a healthcare emergency because people are losing their lives because of this domestic terrorism, which you can honestly say that you were a part of on January 6th and being right there. And thank the Lord it didn't go another way, but it could have very easily gone that way. So, I mean, no one person, I think, can or no one piece of legislation can make this better. But I think that the House is definitely on the right track.
Yes, I totally agree with you. I mean, I can't think of anyone who hasn't been touched in some way. As you shared, I experienced, being trapped up in the gallery on the day of the insurrection, and thank God for God. Thank God for people out there who prayed for us, and for the bravery of Capitol Police and others that made sure we made it out that day. But not everybody is that fortunate. Not everybody is that blessed. And so the fact that we really addressed this, it's paramount. I mean, now is the time. Now is the time.
There is so much, I guess, legislation that's out there, these seven pieces, but I know that there's also going to be opposition. Some say that, this may not make it through the Senate. What are your thoughts on that?
It's interesting because this week I was fortunate to be on a Zoom call with Senator Chris Murphy, who is the lead negotiator in the Senate, as well as Senator Cory Booker, who many of us know from our region of the country, and along with members in the House that are leading the charge on various provisions of the Protecting Our Kids Act. And what was most hopeful was that for the first time in Senator Murphy's 10 years, he is feeling and seeing hope. There are Republicans who are actually saying, you know what, I'm getting calls from my constituents that people want responsible gun ownership, not just, the Wild Wild West.
Right.
That we need to have these common sense measures. And so there are some things that we may not get in this in this iteration, but to make movement, to make progress is what we want to see. And I'm very hopeful that in the next few weeks, you will see the Senate come forward with some bills. They might not be all that the House passed yet, but we will make progress. And that's the goal. I mean, there's so many people on whose memory we do this. There are so many parents who said to me after Uvalde that they just hugged their kids tighter, or that they were even afraid to send their kids to school. We can't be afraid to go to school, to church, to a movie, to a concert, to a mosque, to a synagogue. I mean, literally, you will not be able to fortify this whole country. But if we take those common sense measures and look out for each other, we can see progress.
Absolutely. And I think a little bit of that is personal responsibility. And it's just not in regards to our own actions, but it's into how or what we demand from our legislation, right? We want things done, and we can express some of that at the polls. And then we can express that by contacting you and contacting the delegation. And for people that are watching this in other states, and you want this done, this is what you need to tell your legislator that you want done. Our state is taking very similar actions in developing legislation from just a Delaware perspective to help ramp down some of our assault weapons to a proposed assault weapon ban. Now, I want to be very clear, I'm a gun guy, right? I definitely participate in my Second Amendment. I believe in it, but at the same time, I also believe in having some sort of regulation, and it goes back to that common sense regulation. A week,
Yes.
a week or so ago, I would say that we received the mandate, right? We, as in the people, and you as a representative, received the mandate from President Biden when he reached out to the nation last week saying something had to be done. What type of charge did you accept from that? What were your feelings when hearing that from the president?
That's such a great question. I mean, first of all, he has been at the forefront fighting for this for decades. I mean, the assault weapons ban that we had in place before was through his leadership. And he also, like many of us, know the personal pain of losing a family member. And I think for me, what the charge was number one, to continue the strong efforts that we have put forward in the House. One of the areas that I've specifically focused on with my colleagues in the House is a bill called Break the Cycle of Violence. And in that bill, one of the things that we're saying is that it's not, we can't only focus on the gun part of it, we also have to focus on some of the root causes and some of the things that are prevention based. And so Delaware has done things that have really focused on community violence interventions, because we know different communities have different needs. So we have here in Delaware different initiatives, GVI and others, that focus on community-based violence interventions. Wolfie and others who are out there who have worked tirelessly in this space. And now we have evidence-based research to show that it works. And then hospital-based interventions, where a lot of times retaliation might happen and you can intervene while somebody is in the hospital. These are things that work. Then I specifically got provisions put into the legislation that focused on opportunity youth, young people who aren't connected to school, who aren't connected to a job, to make sure that they have access to apprenticeships, job training, tech skills, things that will give them a real future. To me, it is about making sure we do these common sense gun safety regulations and legislation and responsibility, but it's also about prevention and making sure that we have thriving, strong families, communities, and a country.
And it's sad to say, but I have to ask you one more question in regards to opposition. I made a point last week during one of our rants here is that this is the end of the year for a lot of school students, and they're moving forward with camps and graduations and all this other stuff. But unfortunately for those families in Uvalde, this is the beginning or the middle of their funeral week, right? Laying to rest these 19 students. That to me is enough reason to act. What would you say to the opposition, right? To your colleagues that feel that, hey, this is a right, which I've read that some of your colleagues believe this is just a Second Amendment right, and those that are 18 have the same right as everyone else to own whatever gun that they want to have. What would you say to them, coffee shop conversation, you and a colleague, as to support for your bill?
It's about saving lives. It's about saving lives. And I think that while it's important what I say to them, I think something you said earlier is also important. It's about what their constituents are now saying to them. And that's why, again, the efforts of so many groups of young people, groups of moms, groups of individuals who want responsible gun ownership, them speaking out is as powerful as me sharing coffee with a colleague. Their voice is what's going to make a difference in this moment. Their voice and ultimately their vote.
Yeah. And I look forward to that common sense reaching across the aisle. I see this as a great opportunity for bipartisanship in the House to show a country that has been divided over the past 4 years, greatly in regards to legislation in this country. I see this as an olive branch, so to speak, something that is, death has no partisanship, right? So I think that this is a great opportunity.
That just came out, because I think you are preaching here.
Yeah.
It is all of us are impacted by this.
Absolutely.
Every single one of us.
Absolutely. And if you were to take a look at the unfortunate tragedies that has happened, the past big 3 or 4 that have happened over the past 2 weeks, which is just mind-boggling. I guarantee you that there was a definite cross parties in that, right? Those victims, they weren't any from one particular party. They were from different parties, different ideas, different walks of life, different socioeconomic branches, and they fell victim to this horrible incident. So we really need to take that into an account and not allow, I guess, alternative measures to affect decisions in regards to legislation. And we feel very comfortable with you down there in DC, making sure that that isn't happening.
Thank you so much. And again, we remember, we do this also in honor of those individuals who every day lose their life to gun violence. I cannot tell you, it weighs on our heart, and it also inspires us to keep going and to get these bills across the finish line. And I'm very hopeful that the Senate will be able to make some bipartisan provisions get through, and that they will get to President Biden's desk.
Yes, we remain hopeful for that as well. This is your time here on the agenda as a first-time guest. We appreciate it, but tell us what else is going on and from your office, and what can we expect in the future?
Well, Kerwin, first of all, again, thank you for the opportunity, and thank you for the chance to sit down with you. We are continuing, in addition to the Break the Cycle of Violence legislation I mentioned, we are continuing to work on initiatives that are going to strengthen our economy, keep us healthy, and keep us safe. And so that's everything from my work on supply chains, global supply chains, making sure that when we have a pandemic, there is enough PPE, making sure that when we're building houses, there is enough lumber, or even a screw that was missing in a wastewater plant that it shouldn't take you 6 months to get it. So I'm working on supply chain efforts to make us competitive globally, but also for our national security. I also have legislation focused on climate and specifically protecting our coastal communities as well as our environmental justice communities. Healthcare, which is one of the biggest issues that I tackle and work on as a member of the Health Subcommittee. And that's everything from our mental health to making sure that maternal mortality is not an embarrassment to our country and saves lives, to voting rights. We have not given up on voting rights. I've been a part of conversations about some things that can be done in this term. And again, back to your point about finding those things that we can come together on. We might not get everything in this go round, but we will not give up. We will not give in the words of John Lewis. So thank you so much for allowing me the chance to speak. And don't forget, everyone, that if you have problems with any kind of federal agencies like the IRS or immigration or Social Security, please don't hesitate to reach out to our office as well for assistance.
Thank you, Representative Blunt Rochester, for taking the time to be here on the agenda. We hope that this definitely isn't your last time. We thank you for your determination down in Washington and making sure that us Delawareans are safe and our matters and issues are being well represented. As for you, the audience, we look forward to seeing you next week right here on the agenda.
Let DART do the driving. DART First State provides transportation that is clean, safe, reliable, and affordable. Plan your trip and get real-time bus information with the free DART Transit app. Scan your phone to pay your fare with the free DART Pass app. So what are you waiting for? Try transit today. Visit dartfirststate.com or call 1-800-652-DART.
On Saturday, June 25th, the bipartisan gun legislation was signed by President Biden. The bill is the most significant gun measure to clear Congress in nearly 3 decades. That's 30 years. This bipartisan gun bill intended to prevent dangerous people from accessing firearms and increasing the investments in the nation's mental health system and ending nearly 30 years of gridlock in Washington over how to address gun violence in the United States. The House approved the measure 234 to 193, 1 month to the day after a gunman stormed into an elementary school in Uvalde, Texas. The Senate passed the measure 65 to 33. For lawmakers, advocates, and survivors of gun violence, the law is a culmination of decades of work building on repeated failed efforts to overcome Republican opposition and overhaul the nation's gun laws in response to mass shootings across the country. Senator Chuck Schumer of New York said, "I think the whole country was yearning for something real to happen after these terrible tragedies." Again, the gun legislation will expand the background check system for prospective gun buyers under the age of 21, giving authorities up to 10 days to examine juvenile mental health records. The bill also set aside millions of dollars so states can fund intervention programs such as mental health and drug courts and carry out so-called red flag laws that allow authorities to temporarily confiscate guns from any person found by a judge to be too dangerous to possess them. That does not mean that we're taking your guns away. There have been at least 281 mass shootings in the United States in 2022, according to the Gun Violence Archive. As of June 8th, there have been 27 shootings at schools this year, according to Education Week. We'd like to thank again Representative Lisa Blunt Rochester for taking the time to speak with us, and we'd like to thank you for watching the agenda. Enjoy your evening.